No, I just told him I don't want to get caught between the two of them. I'd like to stay on one side because normally for a session like this, one would get prepared with questions. What I have are data points. Just in case they quiz me in the middle of this, because it's a contentious topic we're going to discuss. The question we've coined, is the Dravidian model really unique, or is it just a political concoction? And I'm going to open by asking you, PTR Palanivel Rajan, you know, when you say Dravidian model, is it taking credit for all that's going right in Tamil Nadu to create and fuel a political narrative? Or is there something truly unique about this Dravidian model? If there is, what are the aspects?
Yeah, well, I think first, thank you for inviting me. Happy to see Mr. Bala again. Going back, I'd like to say about 8 or 9 years, in this very hotel, we had a conclave with India Today. It might have been this hall or the next one. And we talked about the fact that Tamil Nadu in particular, but the South, that was the first time India Today had a South conclave. Okay. So we were in opposition. My current Chief Minister was leader of the opposition. He spoke. I was heading the IT wing at the time. And then I was on a panel with people like Jairam Ramesh. And everybody agreed that the outcomes had been quite unique. That Tamil Nadu, among the large states, had relatively great outcomes economically, structurally. And that at a broader level, the South had some good outcomes developmentally, human development, social development, health outcomes, educational outcomes, so forth. So at the time, we talked about it, and I first mentioned it as a Tamil Nadu model because it was quite unique in its philosophy. And eventually, because it was relatively common to the rest of the southern states, it became called more of a Dravidian model. And it has stuck since then. And that's my first memory. Maybe my memory is not great, but that's my first memory of the Tamil. We talked about it, and I first mentioned it as a Tamil Nadu model because it was quite unique in its philosophy. And eventually, because it was relatively common to the rest of the southern states, it became called more of a Dravidian model. And it has stuck since then. And that's my first memory. Maybe my memory is not great, but that's my first memory of the Tamil Nadu model evolving to the Dravidian model that has now become the kind of, catchphrase, if you will. So the question arises, you have different outcomes, or you have better outcomes. What is really driving these outcomes? And at least as far as I'm concerned, I don't think you can get these outcomes in 5 years or 3 years or 10 years or 20 years. I've been very clear that at the heart of this model, if it is such, is the notion of inclusion, equity, and access. That is, as the great Lee Kuan Yew once said, if you want good economic outcomes, you engineer your social structure, your socio-economic structure the right way, and you get good economic outcomes. So in that sense, it starts with, in my understanding, the 1920 diarchy, first time government of the Justice Party, where they took a hammer to the social construct of the time. In the first 2-3 years, massive amount of legislation, right for women to vote, compulsory elementary education for boys and girls, reservation based on the population percentage of your community, so many, nationalization of temples and equitable access, no hierarchy, anything that established a hierarchy of who was higher, who was lower, and anything that limited access to the most vital of all resources, which was education, and supplemented by nutrition. All of those, the barriers were broken, the layers were flattened, and universal access became the theme. To be fair, from then till now, that has been a continuing advantage of first Madras Presidency, then Madras State, then Tamil Nadu State, in the sense that subsequent governments, whether it was the Congress government of 1937 on under diarchy, or the Congress governments after 1952 till 67, or subsequent DMK, ADMK governments after 67 till today. Only these two parties have run the government. Nobody has deviated from this approach. At the core of it, if it's these three or four things, equitable, universal access to education, to resources, to temple entry, to whatever the benchmark is, 100% inclusion, 100% equity. In the beginning point. Outcomes are not in our control. Then, if anything, the Congress party of Madras Presidency and Madras State adhered closer to this model than it did to the Congress ideology of the rest of the country. For example, here, the Dalit Temple Entry Act was signed by Rajaji when he was a Congress government chief minister, after the temples had been nationalized, instead of reversing. In theory, they could have legislated the opposite, but they doubled up on it. The education inclusion was greatly strengthened by Thiru Kamaraj in terms of investment in expanding the noon meal scheme. The ADMK and the DMK competed with each other in how to give more resources and support to education, to nutrition, clothing, cycles, laptops, whatever it is. So this focus on, broadly if you will, universal human capital development as the top priority of policy. That is probably at the core, the identifying tenet of the Dravidian model, and it has been practiced by many, many people over a century plus.
So that's a very interesting point that he's making, that look, do not see it as something right now. It's the influence the Dravidian core ideology has had on the economic policies irrespective of parties, and hence the Tamil Nadu model is being called the Dravidian model.
I'd say social first, economic follows. Social structure first. Yeah.
Well, the one original inclusive model known around the world was called the Kerala model, which overemphasized equity and sacrificed efficiency. Now, what you said is music to my ears, because you said equitable access to all, and which is very close to a quintessential Adam Smith model, that you want people to have the same opportunity and then let it go. Now, one of the problems I think that we face in India in general is that merit has been declassified and we don't pay enough attention to merit. This is a trade-off. It's a trade-off all societies have between merit and equity. So, one, I want to point out that there is no, let me be blunt, there's no Tamil Nadu model. There is a Kerala model which has now been shunted aside. So let us look at what do you mean by equitable growth, inclusive growth, is basically what you enunciated, that there is equal opportunity, people can gravitate towards where they are most productive, and the state will facilitate and help that. I don't think in India generally, and especially from the center, we can discuss that there is enough weightage given to both sides of the equation.
Yeah, I think there are 2-3 points there. So I don't really care what you call it. I don't need authorship to a model. The fact is that we are a unique state. The circumstances are unique. The politics are unique. The outcomes are unique, and they're spectacularly good compared to most benchmarks in other states. You want to call it a model? Don't want to call it a model? I'm not overly stressed. But the outcomes are spectacularly unique, whether you take it in per capita GDP, whether you take it in gross enrollment in tertiary education, whether you take it in multidimensional poverty index, whether you take it in doctors per thousand. Any number you take, any statistic you take, we have got spectacularly good outcomes. Call it whatever you want. Second, of course there's a trade-off, but part of the Kerala problem is that they are creating such great human resources with such little employment opportunity and economic activity that they have become a gross exporter of human capital to the world at scales where there is almost no kind of profile of a demographic. There are relatively only old people left in Kerala. All the young people have migrated to many parts of the world or many parts of the country. So they have, if anything, a problem that has gone too far one way. I'm not even sure I would call it a Kerala model, but the outcomes again, and again, I'm not in the labeling business. I care deeply about outcomes. I care deeply about improvement in people's lives and growth and the creation of a better future, or at least the hope of a better future. That's what drives me. In that sense, the big difference between Kerala and Tamil Nadu, I would say, is that Tamil Nadu, in addition to doing relatively well in human development and social development, almost as good as Kerala, I agree in some ways we're not, but we continue to have an economic climate where we are able to draw investment in ways that other states are not. Let's just take the proximate example. In the last 3 years, our electronics manufacturing output has gone up 700%. One of the reasons that India's is up almost 60% is that Tamil Nadu's has gone up 700%. The biggest driver of that, of course, geopolitically, globally, is the move away from China. But locally is that we have the talent that is able to go and get employed in the tens of thousands in these factories, and also to actually have a reasonable economic climate of incentives and ease of doing business, etc. Now, going back to your last point, the trade-off between merit and pure merit and reservation to overcome historical inequalities is, of course, a complicated subject. But were we to err on one side or the other, we have to remember that we have only been an independent country for about 75 years, give or take, and all these legislations that I've talked about have only come out in about 100 years or so since 1920 Justice Party government, as opposed to centuries or potentially millennia of oppression and hierarchy. So I was the first guy to agree, and I agree now, that at the inception and probably for the first 2, 3 cycles, 5 cycles or 5 generations of reservation, you are going to get inefficient outcomes. You're going to get highly qualified people that are not able to make the cut because of the slice too small, and less qualified people because of their historical disadvantages get access. But what it does in the long term, and this is vital, I think, for us, is that it creates in every community, in every village, in every society, in every caste, a forerunner, somebody who can be an inspiration, who can be a guide, who can be a mentor, who can provide coattails for others to follow. And so, other than outcomes, it's hard for me to say what should be the theoretical optimal line of trade-off of merit to reservation. But outcome-wise, I would say, if you look at the Tamil outcome, either in terms of within the state or internationally in the diaspora, I've just come from an opening of a think tank where I made the point that if you look around the world, wherever the Indian diaspora is in reasonably strong positions, whether it's medicine, the law, engineering, technology, business, then Tamil Nadu, which is 5.6 or 5.8% of India's population, is probably represented 3x, 5x, 7x, between 20 and 30% of these expats in the top positions are of Tamil origin. So we have created an ecosystem where some get to go and do these wonderful things in other parts of the world, like Indra Nooyi or Sundar Pichai, but others get to stay and still have reasonable outcomes in a way that the weighted average outcome for 75 million people is good. Call it a model, don't call it a model. It is this philosophy, in my understanding, that led to this outcome.
Before you respond to that, I'll tell you what the problem is when you call it a model or you don't call it a model. And I get the point that you're making, that it may not matter economically. But when you call it a particular model, then it yields itself to a confrontationist situation. It yields itself to saying that this is better than that. And the question then, Surjit, is that, is it because that it's being called a particular model that the success of a particular state is being, could I say, discounted in an economic argument?
Yeah. Well, no success should be discounted, number one. Number two, what is, I completely agree with you, we should emphasize outcomes. And, what is very healthy is that there are several states in India that are now competing for a very, very that they have provided very healthy outcome. Two other states are in the south. Andhra Pradesh has done spectacularly well, and Karnataka. Now, the thing about all of these success stories, and I've maybe devoted too much time in my life to analyzing what determines success, etc. But, you know, that's the real healthy part, is that there are numbers, and there are 4 or 5 states in the north, and I'm actually going to be publishing the results from. So in the north hasn't done too badly. Some states. What I think in the discussion, and I completely agree with you, I would just take out the uniqueness aspect because of exactly what has been pointed out. But you know, if you take out UP and Bihar, then the entire country has done very well. Then there are about 5 states, but you shouldn't take them out. They are very much part of the country.
No.
But what I'm saying, one last point. Initial conditions matter. If you look at the education profile of average in 25 to 54 years old in Tamil Nadu in 1983, which is the earliest point we have the data, it was one of the highest, most educated states. Andhra Pradesh was one of the lowest educated states. So initial conditions matter to your progress. Now I think the good news is you have done, you meaning Tamil Nadu has done, extremely well and absolutely full kudos. But I think by positing it as a unique model, you creating unnecessary confrontation.
Yeah, I'm not positing anything. You must remember, I'm a member of a regional party. Our focus is Tamil Nadu and representing Tamil Nadu in the parliament. Our job is to run our state as well as possible. We are not primarily in the business of claiming ascendancy or superiority to anybody. We are primarily in the business of getting better outcomes for our citizens. We do what we do. We defend and argue that our way of doing it is superior to the point of somebody from Delhi telling me that I should do it differently. That's the extent to which
so let me ask, you say Gujarat model, so they are saying Dravidian model. It's all a question of models which are political appropriation for success.
There is a story behind what has just been said. And the story is that southern states, particularly Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, have done, and obviously Telangana, I'm including that in the southern states, have really done well. And for analysts, it's a good question. You guys face exactly the same problem, same rules and regulations, the onerous rules and regulations of the center. Every state faces that. Why have you been able to overcome it? And for decades. And a simple answer where I think you were there, were offered, that in Tamil Nadu and these other southern states, there is what I call efficient corruption. We all corrupt. So this is not to cast a shadow on somebody that I am clean, you are corrupt. We all corrupt in India, okay? And that's the institutional structure, etc. So what Tamil Nadu, one of the reasons for its spectacular success is that it takes the investment, lets it clear, the bureaucratic delays are not there. There is a uniform, probably a clean window of approval. So politics doesn't come in there, and money does change hands. I'm speculating, I have no evidence.
So there was
it's efficiently organized, everybody's happy.
No, so
and things get done.
I would say if there is a super model of efficient corruption, it is Gujarat before 2014, for 10 years, right? Most businessmen would say it was the true single window. One time you paid, everything worked. Unlike in other places, there were conflicts that the authority was not as supreme, therefore there were many hands inside the same window, etc. Let's not get into that. I want to say something much more basic than that. We are not trying to export our model to anybody. I am not interested in saying that you should follow my way. Almost any statistic you give me, I can justify why our model has, or our approach, if you don't like to call it model, has delivered unique outcomes. even
No, you have to
relative
call it a model, otherwise my topic goes for a
Fine,
toss.
fine.
The conversation goes for a
model.
toss.
But again, I say the model came about because we were talking about the different components of it that was so unique. And in this very this hotel, this floor of this hall was when the notion of the Tamil Nadu model became the Dravidian model. There was no Tamil Nadu model, at least in common parlances then. Please go look back before 2018,
exactly the point.
right? So my point is, when we started talking for the first time nationally about the things that we were doing that were yielding good outcomes, people labeled it a model because they wanted to have convenience of shorthand to call it something. Now I'm saying, if I look back to 1960s in any outcome, economically or health-wise, none of the states were that far apart. In fact, till about the 1970s, Tamil Nadu was among the poorest of the states in GDP per capita, as you know, not just total GDP, but per capita. If you say we had relatively better educational outcomes, I'm saying because in 1921, we legislated compulsory elementary education for boys and girls in 1921.
Yeah.
And then we made sure that we gave them food because we couldn't ensure compliance with a stick. So we ensured compliance with the carrot and said, we'll give you free food if you come to school. So I agree. If you say that education at the core of it, then there's a reason we were already better off in 60 because we had 40 years of doing that. I say something more than that. I say that if your basic approach is that human capital is the basis for our success, which I am agreeing, and in the first Economic Advisory Council, when we put it together after we came to power with Esther Duflo and John Drees and Raghuram Rajan and Subramaniam S. Narayan, my chief minister's stated intent was that I want to make Tamil Nadu the primary source of good human capital, not just in India, not just in South Asia, but in the world. At some level, we were always doing some of that. He wanted to do more of it. Therefore, I'm saying these are not things. See, if there's a cookie cutter that I have figured out some great efficient corruption or ease of doing business, everybody can adopt it and catch up with me tomorrow. We are in a competitive economy, as you say. I personally believe that the scale of global opportunity today, considering we are, as Arvind Subramanian says, a sixth of humanity, and you take out the aged people and you take out those who are not getting access to basic nutrition education because of strife, India is going to be 25% of the world's young talent for the next 20 years. Yeah. The scale of that opportunity is so large that I am happy to compete with my friend KTR or my friend Nara Lokesh or my friend Sridhar Babu or my friend Priyank Kharge or the Chief Minister of Kerala who holds IT portfolio. We have so much headroom.
You don't know the Chief Minister who has the IT portfolio. That provides the Kerala model versus the model.
I'm saying, yeah, he holds IT portfolio. Tirupinaraya Vijayan, who's a personal friend of mine, holds the portfolio. So I'm saying, we have enough. If we are all succeeding, that's because the scale of the global opportunity is so high.
Absolutely.
Right? And there's enough room to grow. So I am not primarily in the competitive business. Competition keeps me disciplined, keeps me sane, keeps me focused. Big companies have more power than most governments, as you know. I used to work for such big companies. And so they have the capacity to negotiate over a barrel and they can get all kinds of things from all kinds of people. But going back to the point, I don't think there are any easy fixes. The reality is our model depends on consistent focus on human development, inclusion, equity, women's rights, women's participation in the workforce, and that has to be done for 1 or 2 generations before you can say it is replicable. It cannot be fixed in 2 years or 5 years.
I want to ask Surjit this question as PTR finishes that point, that would you concede that it's the socio-political ethos and the ideology and the political narrative in Tamil Nadu that's influenced the human capital and also the success story of the state, and hence concede that perhaps there is something to learn from here? And would you concede that there's perhaps something that the Dravidian model needs to learn from elsewhere as well?
Yeah. So there's something to be learned. Anybody advocating good policy and all of the human capital, competitiveness, etc., is good policy and has to be applauded. Now, what I think what the southern states can do, or the successful states can do, and we were talking about center-state relations, is try and communicate to the center that, look, we know that there's a genuine problem of Indian capital leaving India. So while we are saying we are getting FDI, lots more capital is leaving India, including human capital. And that doesn't have anything to do with specifically a state policy. I think it's a center policy. So this is where the states can help the center, communicate to the center that, look, something drastically is wrong. If Indian capital, including human capital, is leaving India, there must be something wrong with the central policies, not with the state policies. On that, I want to add, I don't know, we're all talking about and Viksit Bharat and we're all wanting it to achieve. In all my studies, I do not know a single instance of a self-reliant country becoming Viksit. No chance. So this is where you can communicate to the center by the uniqueness of whatever you want to call it. They look, boss, you are in the wrong direction taking the country, and that this needs to be corrected.
So as you answer that question, and this is perhaps the last question, then we'll get a question in from the audience as well. I want to ask you, this era of confrontation that one sees about, how difficult, today the narrative here is one that's being set as the Chief Minister's speech of the DMK-led alliance versus the NDA. How does that era of confrontation, which feeds politics fantastically, affect industry, economics, and irrespective of what economic model is it time to get past that?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, let's start from the easiest to the hardest. When I have conversations with Mr. Bala or Dr. Berry or anybody in any post, irrespective of whether they're state or the center, the union, whether their government is by party A or B or C, we talk as people who want better answers, better understanding for a better tomorrow. It's all reasonable discussions. It's very rare to find two thoughtful people, shouting at each other some slogan, right? Sadly, politics is increasingly descended to that level where it is, politics first and outcomes later. For example, and I say this generically, if the government of India, which is naturally and only capable of doing things like foreign policy, trade negotiations, currency stabilization, export rules, etc., which realistically, as a great federalist, I still say every state can't do that. If there was a single thing they could do better to avail of the global opportunity, and as he said, there is no history of a self-developed, absent oil or coal or gold from the ground, 100% self-developed country. The first thing they could do is to work much more closely with the state governments, irrespective of which political party is in power. If it's theirs, great. If it's not, let it be. Whoever is there at the seat has been elected by the people. Once you are elected, you should stop doing politics and you should focus on outcomes and growth and improvement of lives and living conditions, etc. That would be, if I had one great kind of criticism of the government over the last 3 elections in Delhi, they have become increasingly focused on perpetual politics and not as focused on development and outcomes. They have good people, they have think tanks, they have
that
Niti Ayog, they have
be
people.
valid for you as well?
I don't know, I have not been around for 3 elections, I've been here for 5 years. So my point is that working together, I completely agree. If there's a single thing we can do better, is work together. When I was recently called to the India Mobile Congress, which the Honorable Telecoms Minister, Mr. Scindia, every year invites the state ministers, he asks for all our input, he takes them, sometimes he acts on them, sometimes other issues. But the 2 things I've said every year, I said, please don't allow we had 2 great success stories in Indian economic development. One is civil aviation, one is mobile telephony. Civil aviation story is getting tarnished. I said it months before the whole Indigo problem, that you have allowed an oligopoly to form and you're going to pay the price for it. You should have regulated in such a way that nobody got more market share. Please don't allow that to happen in telecoms, because otherwise this revolution will fade also. Second thing I said, why do you only call us once a year for this, like, highly visible Indian Mobile Congress meeting? Why don't you call us regularly? Because we are the guys giving right-of-way clearances, we are the guys implementing last mile on the fiber net, we're doing all these things. Why don't we meet regularly and figure out how to have a better integrated national grid for fiber optic outcomes? And he said, that's a good idea, we'll do that from now on. So that's one department. But I'm saying, were the Prime Minister or the Commerce Minister or the External Affairs Minister to get all of the states directly engaged, because the scale of this country is such, right? We're like 75, 80 million people, especially the South. We have such large representation in the global business and professional diaspora that working together with us come up with a unified marketing plan, unified policy, unified approach would yield much better outcomes. But politics gets in the way. So that's probably what Chief Minister pointed out today, that it's become confrontational rather than cooperative, and that is completely a sad and bad outcome.
On that note, let me take a question in from Vasudha there. Vasudha, all set?
Rajan, my question to you. In the context of startups, how does the Dravidian model work? Because you need ideas, innovation, people from outside. Do you have a lot of people from outside Tamil Nadu coming to Chennai, setting up businesses? Because the view sometimes in certain segments is that because there's so much focus on Tamil politics and identity politics, the society is insular, it's inward looking, and not, doesn't have the vibe like a lot of other cities.
Yeah, I'll give you some statistics first. When we came to office, there were 2,000 registered startups. Now there are 12,000. So 6x growth in 5 years, right? Now part of that is just the way the world is evolving. Old-fashioned, regular, low complexity, repeatable coding jobs are going away. The big service companies that used to hire 30, 50, 80,000 people a year are either slowing down or in cases laying off for the first time. So there is a natural move towards more creative, more unique. And in my understanding, because I've seen many of these startups, we have multiple initiatives called Startup TN. We have an IT&T hub in my department. We run fairs and seminars. We run annual conferences, which never used to do before. And we focus a lot on startups. Many of these startups, the brilliant thing is that they are actually working on local problems. They understand quality of life problems in urban areas or property tax management or things that are actually local problems are being solved by local creative people. So that's the good news. When I took over as IT Minister, I met with the NASSCOM GCC Council, and they said the good news is GCC headcount in Chennai is up some 50% in 3 years post-crisis, and it's continued to grow. The bad news is that sometimes people from out of the state feel a bit out of sorts here. I can assure you it is not intentional, and I'll explain why. If you look at our culture going back, hundreds of years, 1,000 years, we've always been seafaring, global outlook, yadum ure, yavarum kelir. So it is not that our mindset is parochial and narrow. What is the reverse problem is that we are graduating so many people in the tech space. Something like 20% of India's STEM graduates are graduating in Tamil Nadu. Some of them are out-of-state students in big places like VIT or other private colleges or government colleges. But 5.6, 5.8% of the population, let's say between 9 and 10% of the GDP, 20% of the tech talent is graduating from here. What that does, first of all, is means we're exporting a lot of the talent outside. But you walk into an office in Bangalore, maybe 25, 30% is Kannadiga. The rest are all from outside. I would say 20% maybe from Tamil Nadu. You walk into an office in Hyderabad, maybe the ratio is 35, 40%. You walk into Pune, you walk into an IT company, like a big global brand IT company in Chennai. I don't want to name the company, but a big American media company, one of the biggest in the world. 7,000 people. I asked them, what percentage of your headcount is Tamil? He says 85. And if you include the workforce from the border areas, like 95. So it is, now there's upside to that. The upside is the attrition is low, inflation in wages are low, all that stuff. The downside is if you are one of those 5 or 8%, of course you feel a bit out. So we go out of our way, and we have tried to come up with many policies, and I'm glad to say that many of the unicorns, that have been created out of IIT Madras, significant proportion of them are non-Tamil people. The environment is good enough to come here and do that. So it is not a question of mindset, it is a question of just large numbers. We are graduating so many people. Now, for example, in Madurai, one of the biggest employers now in IT is a company called Pinnacle Infotech, which is a gentleman from Bengal. But because he likes the talent so much, he's come. But the ratio, again, in Madurai is 90% local. And he says within 100 kilometers of Madurai. Right? So you have so many educational institutions, so many people. No. So I agree that diversity and variety of thought is core to innovation and having better outcomes. So we are consciously trying to attract and make life easier. We have some guidelines for renters, how to give like instructions in multiple languages, things like that. But it is more unintended outcome of success in education and talent development than anything else.
So sometimes statistics and the reality may be very different from the perception. I'll have to end this conversation because we're completely out of time. But I have to ask you my final question. You know, forget the economics, the politics of it. Is the Dravidian model going to continue after this election? Or is it under threat now from various factors, from a star to the NDA to the center? Is it under threat? Very quickly.
I'm sure the Chief Minister has already said what is going to happen when he spoke here this morning. Yeah. 2.0 is coming, he says. So 2.0,
the Dravidian model. Surjit, final comment quickly before I wrap this up.
No, I think, look, success...
You also agree to Dravidian model 2.0 continuing?
I think if, as a sophologist, as a, what is it called, amateur, no, I think there's a good chance that, and you know, it is because of success.
Okay.
It is, and that is how people reward success, is precisely through the voting booth. And somebody has to do something really spectacular, unexpected, and not on the cards for this rule to be violated.
Okay. Thank you very much. I wish we could continue this conversation, but unfortunately we're completely out of time. But thanks very much for sharing deep insights, both historic, economic, as well as social, as far as what we define as models. Who knows what models are, ultimately, as long as they work for the people. But thanks very much for speaking to us.